So to get this important discussion, keep this important discussion going this morning, I'm going to invite out a panel of partners representing schools, local government, and community advocacy to discuss how we move forward together. Please welcome Cheri Helt, a member of the Ben Lapine School Board. I think they're coming, yeah. Toya Fick, Executive Director for Stand for Children. Thorne Ladd, Chair of the Portland Community College Board. Denny Doyle, the Mayor of Beaverton, and Melissa Cribbins, a Coos County Commissioner.
My God.
Thank you all for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Patrick.
So, Cheri, we just talked about the fact that the statewide K-12 budget was increased for the next biennium by $800 million. So, you know, as a school board member, I'm interested in your perspective on what's the problem. That's a significant increase in K-12 funding.
Well, that's a great question. Unfortunately, in education, we have not recovered from the recession. We're still living in recessionary times. Our classroom sizes are still larger than they were in 2007, and that's a decade. We have not fully recovered in 10 years. Every investment that we have made in education over the last 10 years has went to hold up the PERS, and it has not fixed it. It has not made it more sustainable, and so we continue every biennium to have PERS rate increases, which we can see for the foreseeable future. This makes it very hard to get teachers in the classroom. We have incredible teachers, we have eager students, and we just don't have the ability to move education forward with the budget that we're given. For every teacher that we hire, we have an additional 56% of costs that goes to PERS and healthcare insurance rates. And what that does is it drives down our ratio of teacher to students. And when students don't have people and teachers and staff that they can bond with or learn with, their success rates go down. And so it's a very unfortunate equation.
Thank you. Toya, so you know, your leadership on Measure 98 was instrumental in getting it passed. It had broad support. Well done. Great measure, great investment in our future.
Thanks.
So Measure 98 passed. Again, what's the problem? We got done what we wanted to get done there, right?
Not quite. But, you know, I want to talk a little bit about what Cheri said, because what's happening in Ben Lapine is happening all over the state. We are, as a state, above the national average in student spending, but our costs are going up far more than the investment. So, for example, in Portland got about $30 million more this biennium than last biennium, but that wasn't enough to maintain costs, and so I had to lay off about 50 teachers, including my daughter's teacher. And it's really hard to explain to parents why our teacher is getting laid off in such a great economy. And the result of all of this is that we're not producing future-ready kids. We are third from the bottom in high school graduation rates, sometimes last, depending on the year, but we're 43rd as a state in terms of youth unemployment, so we got a long ways to go. But the point of Measure 98 was to actually invest in our classrooms, to make sure the money gets to schools and gets to high schools and does the things that reverse this trend, to make sure that we're investing in the kinds of things to get more kids graduated and ready for community college or four-year college or the job market of today. But our cost structure, coupled with the fact that our revenue system does a lot of this, really led the legislature to only give about half of the resources that were promised for Measure 98. As you mentioned, bipartisan support. Every district in the state passed Measure 98, but it wasn't enough to make sure that that full funding went to high schools, and so we got to do better for our kids. We got a long ways to go.
Oh, thank you. Kali, what does this look like at the higher education level? Same kinds of issues?
Yeah, very much so. Back in the 2007 and 2009 biennium, we were about a $500 million investment level, and that's for PCC. That dropped down to $395 million in the 2009 and 2011 biennium. We have been crawling our way back, but we were only at 570 last biennium. And you can imagine over a period of a decade, in terms of the increased costs of things, that doesn't put us where we need to be. We are the most expensive tuition-wise higher education community college in the West Coast. And so the more that we eke towards being unaffordable, the less we're able to be truly the community college that we want to be. We cease being for the community, become something that's unattainable for many. And we know that community colleges are central to providing all people access to higher education and workforce training. And the economic return on that is $1.9 billion to our region. So that's significant. And that's just PCC. And so you look at the entire continuum of community colleges, the investment in community colleges always yields a return. And so the fact that we are not seeing that level of investment, I think, is problematic both for our economy and for students.
Wow. Commissioner Cribbins, so we've been focused on the impact to some of the statewide budget imbalance on education. How does that affect, for a county, how does that affect your ability to deliver the public services that your citizens are expecting?
Right. I'd love to tell you today that rural counties are in great shape and we don't have any problems, but frankly the PERS crisis and the other budget issues hit us in the same way that it does the schools. It's really not a lot different. I would say that employees are our biggest cost, and our benefit load is about the same as the Ben Lapine School District. It's about 56%. And so every time that we have PERS increases, every time that healthcare gets more expensive, counties have to figure out a way to cut their budget. And for those of you who don't know where Coos County is, sometimes it's easier to think in terms of cities, and Coos Bay is our largest city. So we're down on the southern Oregon coast. We're one of the traditionally natural resource dependent counties. And so we have cut for years and years and years. We have cut our budget and cut our budget. And at this point, we're looking at cutting entire departments. At some point, you can't cut a department any farther and have it still be functional. So we'll have to make the decision that we're not going to provide that service any longer.
Wow. So Mayor Doyle, I know Beaverton's economy is doing pretty well these days. Are you able to overcome some of the expense drags that we're talking about here?
Well, at this point, Beaverton is holding its own, but it's going to change pretty soon with more than 30% of our budget is going to have to go to pay PERS. The increases that you all have heard about are real. They're going to happen, and they're going to be devastating to cities. We just had a League of Cities board meeting in Beaverton last week, and I talked to some of the smaller cities on the east side, down the coast. They are closing departments, privatizing everything they can, and they are really at a point, what are they going to do to serve citizens who expect the services, the water, the sewer? That's going to change. This is not, it's the time for action is now. This is no longer a game or a worry it's going to happen down the road. We are on that road right now. And the League is strongly going to work the legislature to try to get fixes put in place, even small fixes at first, symbolic ones that will go a long way, but other things we have to do. But through health care and all the other costs, about 58% of our budget goes to what we used to call fringe benefits in terms of payroll. Think about that.
Yeah.
Wow. So we painted a pretty bleak picture here this morning. Thank you for your
It's uplifting, wasn't it?
Your insight and candor about that. So as we think about the path forward, we've the business plan has proposed this sort of three-part framework about the economy, curbing expenses, and looking at the tax structure. Cheri, is that the right framework to be thinking about? I mean, how do those concepts translate into into real solutions for education?
I think they're absolutely the right things that we need to look at. In the state of Oregon, we really need a vision for how we get money invested into our classrooms, and a larger vision than just high schools, which, Measure 98 was great, and we're very supportive of that. But we also need to have a large vision of how we're going to make a sustainable system of PERS for our teachers and our staffs. They work hard and they deserve a sustainable system, and when we keep band-aiding it, we're not making it sustainable. And we're also never getting to the point where we're getting to invest in education, because we're band-aiding that system and putting all our investment in band-aids. And I think if we have a vision that we can move forward in how we invest in our classrooms and how we invest in our students' futures, that we can succeed. But it means that we're going to have to work together, and we're going to have to come up with some solutions.
Great. Mayor Doyle, are we on the right track with that framework, with the structure of the business plan? Which parts of that should be even further amplified?
Well, the league has been pushing, tax reform for quite a number of years. That a number of us have been asking us to move forward on that. I think we have to peel the onion, sit down with the folks who can make the change. Public and private sector say the time is now. We need to do this, and property tax reform needs to happen. We can fix a lot of the monetary problems and balance the scales for people, but we have to have the will to do it and cut the partisanship out. And I think we can make that happen. And we are ready for it. I think all of us are going to nod our head. If it helps us provide the services that Oregonians want and deserve, we're going to need to do this and just step it up like we did with the transportation plan. That was a tour around the state, took a year. They talked, they put input. When they visited us in Hillsborough, I said, don't think of a billion, think multi-billions. Dream a little bit, and I have to congratulate the legislatures. They got it done, and that's exactly what we have to do on these two issues.
Thank you. Commissioner Cribbins, thoughts on the idea of this three-part framework and taxes, expenses, and the economy, and how that impacts your ability to provide services?
Yeah, I might just amen Mayor Doyle. He's exactly right. Counties have felt the same way for years. The property tax structure is not serving us well, especially in rural Oregon. And I know that people think that we could be leaner and we could be meaner, but anybody who's worked in city or school government or county government knows that there's not a lot of fat left there.
Toya or Kali, any thoughts on this particular topic?
The only thing I would add is that we have to do this together. We can't have any more sacred cows. So no more, we can't do anything more on PERS. We tried in 2013, it's over, move on. But also no more, we can't do any gross receipts tax or raise this particular business tax. We really have to come together and make sure our kids are at the center of that conversation.
I guess I would just add, from an equity perspective, we have a community that is continuously separating in terms of the haves and the have-nots. And education is the bridge that can bring that group over into the other side. And I think that when we don't invest in education, we are perpetuating the disparities that we see in our community. And Oregon can't be the state that we want to be. I think our senator said, we're not free unless all of us are free. And so this is an opportunity to bring freedom to all Oregonians and really set the foundation for what we want to be as a community.
Yeah.
Toya, you've been a successful public advocate and worked important legislation through and made affected other important change. Mm-hmm. How do we work together to move forward? How do we create some kind of a different model here or something to break through and make this work?
It was simply to what I said earlier. We can't continue to go to our corners and become like Washington, where people aren't talking to each other, or where the only thing passes with one party's support. We really do have to come together and make sure our kids are at the center of all of our decisions, all of our conversations. Right now we have one of the best economies we've ever had, and we're still cutting teachers in some districts, and Measure 98 is still half funded. And every time we have a revenue forecast, I sort of hold my breath because I know those good times aren't going to last forever. I cannot imagine, I don't want to imagine what life is going to be like when the next downturn hits. It's not going to be good for our kids. We're not going to build that bridge to make sure people get to the other side. So we've got to continue to make sure that we're investing in the right things and that those investments actually reach our classroom. To both sides.
And Kali, in terms of how higher education is engaged today and the community college system, does the process exist? Are the conversations happening where you feel like that important voice is being heard?
Sorry, can you clarify important voice of the
just in terms of how we address future funding?
I don't know if it's being heard. I think we are definitely sharing what we think as a community college. PCC is the largest higher ed institution in Oregon, and so certainly we have a lot of voices at PCC, and I know the Oregon Community College Association has done a lot of work to help our leaders understand why community colleges are important. I guess I would throw out a few numbers just that are key and I think speak to why community colleges are important. For every dollar invested by a student, they get a $3.70 return. And that's for a student. For a taxpayer, for every dollar invested, they get a over $5 return. So that's significant. Every investment in a community college is yielding a return both for the student, who's the consumer, as well as the taxpayer, who are all of you. And I think when we know that to be true, and we look at the overall business plan in wanting to provide more jobs and more stability to reduce poverty, investing in community colleges is a no-brainer. I don't see the downside. And so coming to solutions, we don't really have a choice. I think we have to figure out a way to invest both in the K-12 system and in the higher ed system. I think when you were speaking, Toya had said a couple times we have to put children first. And I kind of want to see by a show of hands, how many of you have children in this room? And then raise your hands if you have grandchildren. Okay, so this is about the inheritance of these children and these grandchildren that we have in our community. It seems so obvious that what's incumbent upon us to do. It seems like it's a moral responsibility to do these things. And so I just hope that everybody can keep that front and center. This isn't about adults. This is about the children and the grandchildren that are here that deserve opportunity. And if we take these education systems away from them or we don't strengthen what they have, they will not have that opportunity.
Thank you. So Cheri, how does it, as a school board member, what does this process look like? Are we engaged in the right dialogue? What other things need to be brought to the surface and put on the table?
Well, I mean, we're looking at another, in Ben Lapine, we're looking at another 6.8 increase in PERS rates, again, next biennium. So we're looking at cutting another 70 teachers, and I think that it's our job as a state to turn that conversation around and invest in an equitable education, because every time you cut teachers and you don't have a properly funded system, the kids that suffer most are the ones that need the education the most. And education is our path for our future. And last year we came through with a transportation package as a state. I think that was a really difficult lift. There was a lot of disagreement. It was a long process. It was a 2-year process. But we got it done. Everybody's probably not happy with where it landed, but at least there's an investment in transportation. We need to do the same thing around education, and we need to start treating PERS like a math problem. If we look at education as the road for our future, for our state and our children, we have a giant pothole, and our car is stuck in it, and we're just about to break our axle. And we have choices to make if we want to lead with a vision or we want to look in the rearview mirror to our past. And I really hope as a state we come together and we put partisan politics aside and we lead with a vision.
Commissioner Cribbins, certainly our rural communities don't always have the same voice or the voice that they should have. You made the joke about our geography challenges at times.
I have them myself, so.
What does the conversation look like to you? Is it happening in the right way? Are we talking about the right things? Are we moving forward?
I think we're absolutely talking about the right things. And I think what we have to remember is that we're all in this together. It's really easy to say city government versus county government versus higher education versus schools because we all know there's a limited pot. But the truth is that if kids don't get a good education, then they become the citizens that city and county governments are having to spend more resources on. Because education is what gives hope, and education is what gives a chance for people to do better than their parents, for people to move forward and build our tax base and start businesses. And so we need to be able to invest in both, because frankly, counties and cities, I can speak from county perspective, we spend over 60% of our general fund budget on public safety. That's a lot of money, and nobody wants us to decide that we're not going to spend that anymore. But if we can do better with this generation, then we can help counties not have to spend that kind of money on public safety anymore. So I think we just need to remember that we're in this together.
Thank you. So Mayor Doyle, a lot of the conversation is around budgets at the state level. As you pointed out, the cities have the same challenges, same dynamics, either today or certainly in the next economic flattening or downturn to exacerbate that. Is the conversation right? How do we open that up and make sure everyone's at the table?
Well, I think it's really critical that the business community continue to be active in politics. It seems like that doesn't make sense. It makes ultimate sense. We need to craft ways to grow the economy, provide jobs. It sounds like the old mantra, but that really does help while we fix the tax code. I was going to start this morning saying that I got together with some people from the House and the Senate and somebody from the governor's office over the weekend. We in the new keeping of how we do business in America, we rewrote the tax code. It's just going to be a joke. But, but seriously, we need to get all the groups together, all the different agencies, come to the table, honestly and openly, without a big mob there, and fix the things.
Yep.
And if we make a mistake in the fix, we'll fix the fix. That's the way it works now. But we have to address it now. It's really, really important. And because it's not going to get better because we want it to, right? We just can't wish it. And Peter Pan comes down and some magic dust from Disneyland fixes it. So we've got to get with the business community. And that's why I'm really, really tickled that everybody's here. I've been at the coastal meetings. We get it. Now let's go fix it.
Right. So this thought, Mayor Doyle raises the question about the business community's involvement in the process, involvement in politics. Anybody thoughts about that from an education standpoint and the role of business and the obligation and requirement of business to be involved?
Absolutely. This is a both and conversation. We cannot just have one side of the table talking about what we want to do in terms of raising taxes, and the other side talking about what not to do in terms of raising or lowering PERS costs. This is a both conversation. It has to start today. One of the things I keep hearing is that this is a long process. We cannot wait until the start of the 2019 session and get down there and decide to work together. We have to do that now. So we're looking for partners to raise that conversation to a level that the legislature can hear right now, starting today. Absolutely.
We need to take some small bites of the apple. I think we keep trying to take on too much, and if we can work together and start taking small bites, we'll be able to start fixing a problem instead of pretending it's not there.
Yeah, great. Other thoughts on business's role?
Well, I guess I'm struck by, when you think about the ecosystem of any community, business plays a very important role in that ecosystem. And as much as we can't survive without education, we also can't survive without business. And so I think businesses are critical stakeholders in the conversation. I think they are also part of what makes our economy thrive. Community colleges are unique because we work very closely with businesses and we work very closely with students. And I do think it's coming together. I'm optimistic. I do think that there are a lot of business owners and business leaders that care about the future of Oregon and want to have this conversation. I don't think it's accurate that business just doesn't want to come to the table. And I think we have to get creative and be innovative and think outside the box. And if we mess up, we have to try again. But I don't see how we have this conversation without business. And so, yes, I would agree.
And if I could, I share your optimism because we've shown we can do this with the transportation package. And it's a setting a tone and a milestone for the rest of us to say, let's address another issue that impacts this statewide. When that debate was going on, people on the east side, we want to get our goods to market. We want the roads in the metro region to be fixed. We all want the same things, and I think we've shown to ourselves we can do this, and I really think we can pull this off.
So a lot of appreciation for the urgency and the mountain we have to climb, but it sounds like a lot of interest in partnering and enthusiasm for getting after this thing finally and working together. Additional thoughts on this significant challenge facing us and the complexities of getting after it now.
Well, our kids only have one time to go through the K-12 system. We got to get it right. And as we've seen, we have just not been able to do that. Of the last generation, our kids have not seen stable or adequate or revenues that actually go to things that they can see and feel. And so what's happening as a result of that is our kids are not able to get jobs, so they're not able to finish community college if they start, and many of them are just not making it across the stage with their peers in 4 years for high school graduation, and that is unacceptable. We cannot continue to allow that to happen. So it's an urgent problem. Our kids only have one shot to be kids and to go to school, and so let's make that the best we can make it, and that's just not what we're seeing right now in Oregon. So it's a very urgent problem that we need a solution to right now.
Yeah. This is one of those things where there's never going to be a good time. There's never going to be a time when everyone says, okay, it's not Christmas, we're not dealing with anything else, let's go ahead and deal with this now. We have to prioritize it. We have to say, now is the time, and now it's our priority.
We've put this off too long. We just have to work together. Our students deserve a great education, and our businesses need our students to have a great education so they can continue to prosper. It's, you know, we work together, and we need to work together, and what we're not doing is working together, and that's really showing. And so I'm really hopeful that we can get a vision around what's the most important thing. Everyone always agrees about education being the most important thing. We just have to also put our money where our heart is.
We just need to walk away from this meeting and get to work. It's not complicated.
Let's go.
And we need leadership that's going to help us do that. And that's the critical ingredient, I think, that we can sit and talk about stuff. I mean, I'm passionate about pre-K, little kids arriving to kindergarten prepared to succeed. So, well, that's a different subject. But it's really important that we, get the leadership going in the state. And I think this room has got plenty of leadership, plenty of talent, plenty of good ideas. We just got to go get it done.
I think I'm struck by what's happening at the national level, and I think one of our senators also said, we've not seen politics, and perhaps it was Debbie that said it, but we've not seen a political landscape like we see right now. And I think, as challenging as that might be, there's opportunity in that, and I think Oregon can lead more than it's currently leading. And we are known as a state. One of the things that I found, and I've been in Oregon for 15 years, when I came here, was collaboration is something that you see in Oregon that you do not see in all states. And within communities and across communities, we see collaboration. We see the rural areas talking with the urban areas. I think that is a strength and an asset that Oregon brings to the table at the outset. And so now we have this political environment that's unlike anything we've seen. How do we step into that in a way that truly allows us to overcome some of the barriers that we see? I think that speaks to part of why now is so important, because we can't rely necessarily on everything else. And we come and bring to the table so many assets to begin with. So how do we really use those for our advantage in this situation?
Thank you. Well, that's a great way to end this panel. I'm hearing a strong case for the urgency of this issue and the size of it certainly, but also an optimism and a willingness to participate in that process. And so thank you all for that. And the business plan looks forward to working with you all as we move forward and try to get after this and get to work, as Denny says. So
Remember, Kelly, the bar is so low now, we can't help but look good.
all right, help me thank the panel, please.
Thank you.